You're listening to the Journey podcast. Often, new and expecting moms get confronted with their own fears, stress, and anxiety during pregnancy and birth. Find out how a birth doula can help with a beautiful birth journey in today's episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Today is part of International Stress Awareness Week, and this is a special bonus episode. Birthing a new life is a miracle, and the pregnancy and birth journey should be beautiful and profound for the expecting mom. But often new and expecting moms are overwhelmed by fear, stress, and anxiety, and pregnancy and birth become difficult and even scary to navigate. This is where birth doula Anna Munoz comes in. She helps prepare moms for the birth of their dreams and teaches them the tools to navigate any unforeseen events that might come up. Her presence and guidance supports moms' mental and physical well-being, as well as supporting her birthing partner and family. Anna is a prenatal massage specialist, birth doula, and mindset coach who helps parents in any stage of their childbearing year overcome the stress and overwhelm that is accompanied with becoming pregnant, giving birth, and transitioning into parenthood. In January 2020, after 2 years of preparing for this moment, Anna became pregnant with her first daughter. Little did she know that her meticulous pregnancy and birth plan would go out the window 2 months later when the pandemic hit. Anna used her doula knowledge and mindset tools to navigate the ever-changing landscape of birth. She now uses these same exact tools to help parents prepare for their dream birth, as well as how to navigate birth when the unexpected happens. Let's meet Anna Munoz. Hi, Anna. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been looking forward to chatting with you about your experience as a birth doula and how that is connected to holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Petra. Thank you so much for having me. I've also been very excited and looking forward to our chat.
Yes, and let's get started. Can you share a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work, into becoming a birth doula?
Of course. So it all started in my youth. My high school had a program of you could bring a doll home and like it was a baby and you'd treat it as if it were your baby and you had to keep it alive the whole time. And I know the doll is not the same as, having your own baby, but it kind of inspired me as to like, oh, but what would it be like to be a mom? And I thought about becoming a midwife, going into nursing school and all that. And the woman who one day became my doula introduced me into what a doula does. I was just fascinated because here is someone who provides educational support, emotional support, and physical support to a laboring mom, but she doesn't do the medical side of it. It's more of the everything other than the medical responsibility. And I fell in love with that. I didn't pursue it right away. I pursued it when I recognized that, okay, I'm ready to be selfless because labor can happen at any time, at any hour. And I have missed out on birthdays and holidays and events because my clients have gone into labor. And I'm just grateful that I listened to myself. And there was the second when my sister got pregnant that I was like, okay, I'm ready to support someone in their journey at whatever time of day, year, month, hour that they need my support. It's a beautiful thing to be able to watch a laboring mom, a laboring supporting partner, and being able to support them through such a life-changing moment.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds like your story goes back a long, long time into high school. So it feels like you've really found your calling being a birth doula. Now, you explained a little bit about what a birth doula does. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that to explain that to our listeners and how exactly a birth doula can support moms or parents?
Of course. So, one of the first questions I get when people hear that I'm a birth doula is, oh, so you only go to home births, right? Or women who only want unmedicated births. And that's actually not the case at all. There's birth doulas that attend hospital births, or they attend birth center births or home births, and we are welcomed in any space. And we provide, from the moment that you hire us, we provide you the educational support. So if you go in to see your provider, be it a midwife or an OB, we provide the educational resources of things that they bring up that they don't really have the time to support you in, because they tend to go, all right, let's check your blood pressure. Let's, hear the heart rate, heartbeat. And then they have to move on to the next patient. And you're left with questions, or not knowing if you had questions. You walk out the door and you're like, oh, wait, I had these things come up. And so we're a very great resource to provide you the answers, or point you in the directions to find the answers that you may be looking for that your provider may not have had the time for. And then when you go into labor, we are with you from when you call us or when you are in active labor. And we're with you through the whole time. A lot of people tend to hear birth doulas and they go like, but what do we need you for if we have our provider and we have the nurses? But it's a very rude awakening, at least here in America, where when you get to the hospital, if that's where you choose to give birth, the nurse checks you in. You're not her only patient that night. And if it's a busy time of the year, a busy time of the week, they could be juggling multiple patients at a time. And so they're not going to be with you the whole time, while a birth doula will be with you the whole time from when you call them in until you give birth. And then afterwards, we stay with you, most do, until baby latches on, if breastfeeding is something that the parent chooses, and then you're transferred over to mother baby. Or if you're at home, we stay with you until everything is settled and cleaned up and everyone's good, and we feel we could leave mom and dad, or mom and partner parents with the baby. So we give you more of the emotional background support of having someone with you, as opposed to your provider walks in the door the second that you're ready to push, or your nurse is coming to check you because the monitor at their station is telling you that they have to come check on you.
Mm-hmm. Wow. But that sounds really amazing, the work that you do and the way that you support moms and partners. So I would definitely recommend everyone get a birth doula. That sounds really amazing.
Yes. Definitely. I definitely do. It's one of my passions, where I come up to anyone who's pregnant around me and I'm like, do you have a birth doula? And even my husband now, and relatives who understand what I do, go up to their friends. My cousin told me he went up to his best friend and he's like, so are you getting a birth doula? Do you have one locked in yet? And his best friend was like, what do I need a birth doula for? And here is this man who's never attended a birth. And he's like, explaining everything we do. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys understand the importance of us.
Wow. So that's good. Free publicity all around the family and friends.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And even if I'm not the right one for everyone, because I'm not the right doula for everyone, there is a doula for everyone out there. There's doulas who specialize in hospital births, or they specialize in VBACs, vaginal births after a cesarean, or they specialize in twins, or they specialize in unmedicated. The list goes on and on. So there is a birth doula for everyone out there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And do you want to talk a little bit about when people should hire a birth doula? Because it's obviously not a good idea to call you when you're going into labor and say, hey, I need a birth doula. When do you recommend that people come and speak with you?
I recommend the earlier the better. And here's why. Because you have doulas in all stages of their career. So you have doulas who are just finishing their training right now, and you have doulas who are seasoned, or you have doulas who market themselves really well on social media, that you may not be pregnant yet, but like, oh, I love what this person says, their values, their morals. I want that person to be my doula. But if you're thinking that as well and you're not pregnant yet, then there's definitely other people out there thinking the same thing. For example, my doula, I knew she'd be my doula. So the second I found out I was pregnant, I text my husband. I'm like, oh my God, like I couldn't even create those very cute Pinterest announcements for him. I was just like, oh my God, here's our double line, like we're pregnant. And then I messaged my doula and I'm like, I'm locking you in for October. And so we can only see a couple of people a month. I think that there's people who only see one client a month, and then there's others who are more adventurous and do 4 to 5 births a month. And so the sooner the better to lock in the doula that you want for yourself. The closer it gets to your birth, it's a bit more stressful because you have to form that relationship. You have to interview. I do recommend interviewing multiple doulas so that you can get a clear understanding of what each person does. So the earlier you start the process of interviewing, the better. I once had my current client. She interviewed doulas for 2 months. I had already thought that she'd moved on and got someone else. And 2 months into her pregnancy was when she called me right back. And she's like, all right, Anna, I've interviewed all the doulas out there that I wanted to interview, and I've chosen you. And she locked me in for her birth date. The earlier, the better, so that you can interview who's available for you and make sure that you choose who your top doula is.
And that makes sense. I mean, pregnancy and birth is such an intimate journey that you really want to make sure that you are working with someone that you have a good relationship with and someone that you trust to be there at your birth and that you want to be there at the birth. So I can definitely understand that the sooner the better.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about pregnancy and the fact that it can be very, very stressful. And as you have told me before, you happened to get pregnant right when the pandemic hit, and your pregnancy and birth plan kind of went out the window with that. So, how can a doula help women that are experiencing a lot of mental health pressures due to pregnancy, or maybe due to being anxious or fearful about the upcoming birth?
Yes, I got pregnant January 2020, and I'm a birth worker. I planned for what my pregnancy would look like. So I had the whole 9 yards planned out. I had the yoga, the prenatal yoga, I had the acupuncture. I was going to go swim in a pool the whole summer because floating in water is wonderful for your back and just feeling weightless. Like, I had everything planned out, and everything flew out the window March 2020. And it was very funny because I still had clients at that time. And I remember one of them calling me because telehealth was a new thing. And she called me crying, and I gave her support. We walked through okay, cool. All right, you're not hearing baby's heartbeat, but, let's start talking about what to feel like, because she was getting to a period where she should, start feeling baby's movement. And so, I was explaining to her what feelings to look out for, and, walking her towards having faith and trust in herself, and having trust in that voice that tells her everything is okay, as opposed to how the media was at that time. And so we're very good at calming you down. And it was pretty wild because it was 2 weeks later where I was then in her spot crying, being like, oh no, now it's my turn. They called me and told me that my appointments were going to be on telehealth. And I called my doula crying, and I was like, I know logically I should have known that I would be next receiving this phone call because we're both in the same boat, my client and I. But I was so focused in supporting her and through, walking her through the emotions she's feeling, walking her through what is a normal feeling and what are the little red flags that she should be concerned about, and when to be like, okay, no, let's go look for actual physical in-person support. And it was just eye-opening to recognize that we as doulas are very good at dissociating from our feelings so that we could fully focus on you, on what your needs are, and bringing up the tools and the resources that we have, and recognizing that if we can't give you the full support that you need, that we also have resources that we refer you to, such as mental support, therapists, or mindset coaches, people that could help you work through those thoughts that come up, because whatever comes up in your pregnancy may also come up during your birth, and we want to start to process these things as early as possible. And so that's how doulas are so good at giving you that full support emotionally and with the stresses, because when you're pregnant, you have all the hormones, you have all the mommy pages, you have all the scare tactics that are out there. They, in one form, mean well, but in the other hand, it actually is the opposite, and it has a counter effect of inducing more stress and inducing more overwhelm. And so we have tools and resources to help you process this and recognize that other people's experience aren't going to happen as often as possible. And so we can give you that relief and that, walk you through that everything is okay.
And usually the stories that you do hear, either from family or online, are just the horror stories. I don't usually hear people talking about beautiful and amazing births, even if they've had them, because people tend to be much more interested in all the things that went wrong. So it is true, I believe, that the stories that you're going to hear, if you're going into pregnancy and then giving birth, they're mostly going to be negative. So it's really good to have someone by your side that will tell you what is real and what is not so that you can get ready for birth and you can keep a positive mindset.
Can I just add to that it is true. I have so many clients who have had good experiences, and after the birth, we'll talk about it. And I'll tell them, I'm like, listen, if you're feeling up to it, I'd suggest you share your birth story, because your birth story is so beautiful and it's so amazing that other people should hear the side of what is possible. And it's very interesting because we hear so many traumatic stories that the people who have good birth experiences are kind of like, but I don't want to rub it in their face. And it's a very wild thought process that occurs in the birthing world where the people who have amazing birth experiences kind of feel that they have to minimize how amazing their experience was so as to not further hurt people who experience traumatic birth. And the people who experience the traumatic birth, they have to process what they're experiencing, and they come from a well-meaning place, but they don't recognize that they're perpetuating the cycle of stress and scare and fear when they share their traumatic birth experience. But it would be way more empowering when they process their birth and then they go and share it from a more empowered space, as opposed to the I don't want to freak you out, but let me tell you all the things that went wrong in my birth, because that's the narrative that we're hearing very often on social media. We see it on TV, we see it in movies, but very rarely do we hear about the orgasmic births, or do we hear about, the fantastical water births or the fantastical home births or the fantastical, like everything just went amazing and I'm just super happy over the moon. Those stories don't tend to be shared as often.
And that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I agree. And I mean, I do have a lot of friends and family who have children now, were pregnant before. And that's exactly the same story, is that there's a lot of traumatic and negativity out there surrounding birth. And that does make it hard for first-time moms to look forward to it and to be excited and positive about it. So thank you so much for sharing that, and also for the work that you do so that first-time moms can actually get really excited and have a positive birth experience. I love that.
Yes, that is the goal, that they experience it from the first time, because there are moms where you see them sharing the positivity, but then they start off with, or even when people find out I'm a doula, second-time moms, third-time moms, they're like, wow, I wish I'd hired you for my first birth. And it's always the first birth where we come in with the mentality of my provider has my best interest in mind. And they truly do. But that's unfortunately here, at least here in the States, it's the bare minimum. Having a healthy baby and having a healthy mom, it's the bare minimum. And their standard of healthy is healthy physically. But mentally, after giving birth, they're not in that healthy state. They're in the fight or flight, and continues, because birth is one of those things where you go into labor and you could be anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of days. And it's not like, a marathon runner, right? That's the most excruciating type of sport that we think of, right? 26 miles. And even the greatest athlete does that in anywhere between 2 and plus hours. But a woman in labor is in labor for way more than just 2 hours. And a marathon runner finishes the race and then they start to heal from it, right? But a woman, a birthing person, gives birth, and then you go straight into the next event, and the next event is for the rest of your life, and that's called motherhood and fatherhood, parenthood. And it's one of those where your body starts to heal, but mentally the things that came up during labor, if you don't start to process it, will then just transition into motherhood, and then you bring that forward into further pregnancies. And that's something that I think a lot of doulas want to minimize, make it less prevalent in the world. We want it to be something that's so joyous, and you recognize that birth could be uppercase traumatic or lowercase traumatic, and we also have the resources to help you heal from it and see the beauty from your experience.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned mindset a little bit when we spoke before. And how does mindset work impact birth, and how can it support parents in experiencing an empowered pregnancy and birth?
Yes, I love that question. I like to say birth is 90% mindset work and 10% physical. And it's one of those things where we have to focus on it. Like, we have to start working on implementing tools and giving parents, both the birthing person and the supporting person, support, because a doula is there to support, but your partner is your person. Your partner is the person who knows you the best, knows how to support you the best. But when they're in stressful situations, they tend to revert back, and you either freeze or fawn, or you want to flight. And I see that in birth a lot. And so mindset plays a massive role in not only the birthing person's experience, but also the supporting person's experience. And so how I like to approach it is, I'm so grateful when I started on this journey of becoming a birth doula, I saw the physical side of it, but I needed to learn more about the mindset side of it. And there are so many amazing tools, such as hypnosis, where we could start to get into, in my experience, that feeling of trance that you go into when you get hypnosis. I didn't know it at the time, but that trance that you go into with hypnosis is similar, if not the same trance you go into when you experience birth and you use your brain to allow it to work through, where you have to shut everything down and go down to that animal instinct of, okay, I need to connect with my body, I need to connect with my baby, and I need to connect with some higher energy that is flowing through me to peacefully open up and bring baby down and make space for what I'm about to experience. And so mindset work plays a massive role, because you can either enter birth being super stressed out and afraid of the pain of contraction, or we could work on what is your relationship between pain. And do you understand that the pain of contractions is not really pain, but more so power and intensity that's going through your body, and it is of your own thing, as opposed to when you, for example, are cutting an avocado open and the knife slices through your hand and you're getting the pain signal of you just cut yourself, and your body's telling you like, pain, 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 something happened over here. We have to notice what's going on here. They're two different experiences of pain, but our brain can either be our ally in that moment when you're getting the signals of intensity and contractions, or it could be your worst enemy, making the pain more heightened because you've added in the fear of, I don't know what it'll feel like. I don't know what's next. I don't know if I could handle this. So mindset work plays a big role in rewriting our relationship with pain. It plays a big role in us imagining what birth will be like, because we may not know what it will feel like until you experience it. But studies have now shown that your brain, your unconscious mind, doesn't recognize real versus imagine. So if we can put you into a trance, use hypnosis, and start to imagine what you imagine birth will look like for you, then we can start to trick your mind into believing like, oh, I've done this before. I can do this again. This is how I imagine I will handle this situation. This is how I imagine I'll handle pushing. This is how I imagine I'll handle being at home. This is how I imagine handling transitioning to a hospital, if that's what you choose. It's a very, very powerful tool, because the easier it is for the mom, the birthing person, to go into that labor land, which I like to call it, the more easier and the more quicker you go into labor land, the easier your body will have doing what it has to do, as opposed to when you fight going into labor land, you fight your body, you fight your mind, you're kind of using your energy in not the smartest way, because you're fighting yourself through something that naturally is going to happen. And then when you think about mindset work for the partner, you revert back to those caveman days, right? Where you want to support your partner and you want to take away the pain, right? Where if it were someone walking down the street and they bump into your partner, you want to go into the defense and be like, watch it, you're bumping into my partner, like watch where you're going. You have someone physically you can fight with, right? But in birth, when you watch your partner going through labor, it's them against themselves. It's her against herself. They tend to freeze and not know how to best support themselves. So when we support the partner in mindset work, we could then start to put them into okay, let's imagine, how will you support them in early labor? How will you support them when the contractions start to become more powerful and more often? How do you see them needing your help? What words will you say to them? What foods do they like to eat? What drinks do they like to drink? How do you see them needing your help? How do you see yourself showing up? So that way you're not facing the unexpected, more so you're prepared for all the different scenarios. And now you're not going to freeze, fight, or flight. You're going to be like, oh, we prepared for this moment, and now I have all of these tools as to what my next step will be. It's a very powerful thing, because us as doula, we're not there to take over their partner being their main support person. We're there to enhance everyone's experience, and mindset work helps us prepare for how will mom, the birthing person, handle labor? How will dad or birthing partner handle labor? And then we get to watch them, observe them, and then step in and help guide them if they do tend to freeze for a moment and go, I don't know how to support them in the next move. It's very powerful when you bring mindset work into birth.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound very, very powerful, and also very empowering for the mom giving birth, but also the birthing partner who is there. So, wow, powerful. It's powerful.
It's definitely as powerful.
And could you go over your services so that listeners can get a feel for how they could connect with you in their birthing journey?
Yes, of course. So if you are local, we are moving out of state to Florida in the fall. So my birth services in person will continue in Florida starting this fall. But I do also, with this move, we are going to be offering virtual support. So there are partners who say to me, because this is a question I get very often, like, but why do we need you? Like, what do we need you for? And they're like, no, we could handle this on our own. I am going to start offering virtual kind of like become your own doula support for the partners, where I will walk them through, okay, let's work through comfort measures. Let's practice as if this is happening. And so I've got a program like that. I have one-on-one hypnosis sessions for birthing partners and parents. And I've got my doula services. And once we are all settled, I will start my massage practice up one more time. So there's a whole arrangement of support that I have coming for my clients so that they can feel empowered both physically, mentally, and emotionally for birth, be it if they are the birthing person or if their partner is the one who's going to be taking these classes. And you can find more information in the link that I'm going to be providing for you.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much for all these fantastic services that you're putting out there. I love it. And I'm sure our listeners will love that too. And Anna also has her own podcast called the Mother Within Podcast. And you can listen in from your favorite podcast provider. And we will be linking to all of Anna's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check those out. And this has been another incredible episode. And I hope our listeners have enjoyed the journey into pregnancy and birth as much as I have. It has been wonderful chatting with you on the podcast, Anna. Thank you so much for your time today.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Petra, for having me on your podcast. It's been so much fun and an honor to speak with you about this.
Oh, thank you so much and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please subscribe, share on social media, and leave us a review. And be sure to get your copy of our brand new ebook called Break Free. Sending you love and courage, and see you next week. Until then, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and the Journey blog.